just like self-care, cannabis has to be intentional, right? Your self-care needs to be intentional. The commitment you make to yourself, the things that you do to pour into yourself have to be intentional, right? You're not just getting up and saying like, oh, I'll just meditate today. Maybe if I get a chance. No, it's saying like, hey, I am making this commitment to myself that I am going to pour into myself, and it's intentional. Welcome to High on Self-Care. I'm your host, Stacey Zeal, yoga teacher, crystal lover, high-functioning stoner, and CEO of MaryZeal.com, a community for stoners who love cannabis and are looking to prioritize their self-care. On this podcast, we'll explore ways that meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and of course, all things weed can help you to elevate your self-care. We'll explore ways to truly value ourselves, use stillness for self-discovery, and cannabis to go higher on our journey. Think of me as your sister stoner who lovingly encourages you to prioritize yourself and reap the benefits of this magical plant. If you're ready to create a life that holds space for your most valuable asset, that's you, by the way, take a deep breath, light your J, and let's dive in. Hey there, welcome to the High on Self-Care podcast. My name is Stacey Zeal and I'm your host. And as always, I am so excited that you are here. I'm excited to have another awesome episode for you today. We're going to be talking about picking strains and cannabis and how do you know what to buy when you go to the dispensary, all those good things. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. And before we dive into that, I want to just let you know, last month, our podcasts were all about rest for growth. So if you are new here, welcome. Make sure you subscribe and go back and listen to some of last month's episode because it was all about rest for growth. We talked about ways to create an evening routine and all kinds of ways to bring rest into your life so that you can get to the next level. And so definitely want to make sure you checked out the last month's episode. A word that has just been on my mind is intentional. We have to be intentional with the way we use our cannabis, be intentional with the way we live our lives, the way we practice self-care. So that's really what all of the podcasts for this month are about, right? Last week, we talked about endometriosis and some of the signs to look out for that and how to use cannabis to help with that. It was such a great episode. Next week, we're going to talk about CBD. We're going to go in super deep on CBD, y'all. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. It's amazing. And then finally, we're going to talk about stress, right? We're going to talk about how to use self-care for stress. So I'm super excited for that episode as well. And so today I thought I wanted to give you an overview, some context, some how-to, some actual real science-y kind of information and some under the surface information when it comes to selecting weed and figuring out which products that you're going to try. And so speaking of products, one of the things I have created is Mary Zeal's Favorite Things. This is new on MaryZeal.com. I have a Mary Zeal's Favorite Things, and I've been getting so many questions, y'all, about what products to use, what CBD products specifically to use, what types of, gadgets and stuff I have, all the different things. I've been getting so many questions, and instead of just keep kind of, DMing people, things that I use, I decided to put together a list of my favorite things and just some things that we over at Mary Zeal really have used, we've tried, we love. And yeah, so head over to MaryZeal.com/favorite things to check that out. It'll also be linked below and it'll be linked in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. If you're in the market for some products, some CBD things, definitely make sure you check that out. And next week's episode is also just going to give you a lot of great information about CBD and how to buy CBD online and all kind of good stuff. So be on the lookout for that as well. All right, so let's dive into today's topic, right? Let's talk about the topic. And in order to get into that, let me give you a little bit of context. So I've been working on something recently about my first time that has me thinking about the first time I went to a dispensary. First time I went to go buy weed. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think it will hopefully either put you at ease, it'll maybe make you laugh, but really it'll set the context for today. And so I am a big into learning. I love to learn new things. And so if I see something that could possibly help me or someone I know, I'm like dive all into the topic. So when I started to come across, when I, had all my my wake up call from falling asleep driving and having to really take my insomnia seriously to finally deciding, okay, I'm going to try cannabis to help with this. Once I got to that stage that cannabis is definitely something that I want to help me, that I want to try to help me, I started to do research. I started to figure out, like, okay, how do you buy cannabis? What am I supposed to do? Like, and I had been around cannabis before, so it's not like I hadn't been around weed before, right? So it's not like, I'm a complete novice. But I really just wanted to learn more about how do I use it for myself? How do I use it for sleep specifically is what I was looking for. I'm like, what do I buy for sleep? And so I remember going into the dispensary. I remember exactly which one I went to in Las Vegas. And I went in there and I had a ton of questions. Okay, because I did some research. I'm one of those people, y'all, that's like, like you go to WebMD and you see all the symptoms that saying you're dying, and then you go over to your doctor and say, I have a ton of questions because I saw this online. That's me. So I go in, I ask the bartender, I'm like, hey, I asked all these questions about, different types of weed, all that kind of stuff. Kind of just, told him I'm looking for something to help me with sleep. I have insomnia, blah, blah, blah. And the bartender says, he's like, oh yeah, we recommend indicas for sleep. These are the types of strains we typically recommend for sleep. And I said, oh, okay, well, give me all three types. So he started to explain, like, oh, that we have sativa, we have indica, there are hybrids, and I'm going to go into a little bit about what those things are in a second. But so he says, indicas are great for sleep. That's what we tell people to use for sleep. So I said, okay, great. Let me get an indica, let me get a hybrid and a sativa, because I need to try all of them. And so I before I went to bed that night, I smoked my indica, and honestly, it didn't put me to sleep. It really didn't. It just kind of made my body feel very heavy. My body felt relaxed and heavy, and I was just kind of laying there like, okay, this is cool. This feels good, but I'm not asleep. I'm still awake. And for me, I had to realize, the reason I couldn't sleep is because I can't turn my mind off. And so because I had smoked something that was specifically used for a body high, or to give you a more physical sensation, rather than a euphoric, mind altering sensation. That is why I was kind of just laying there feeling just extra comfy, but I just couldn't sleep. So I say all that to say, so then the next day I was like, okay, well, this indica didn't work for me, but there's something here, right? I got that feeling the first time I tried it, that like, something's here, that there's something good here, right? Okay, this is making me feel kind of good, but I just need to play around a little bit and experiment and figure it out. And so I ended up trying the sativa the next night before bed. I was like, okay, well, let me try this sativa one and see if that works. And it was amazing. It literally, it worked so well. And the reason it worked well is because it helps to turn my thoughts to white noise, kind of like sativas. It helps to slow my mind down, right? It helps me to focus. And that's what I need to help me sleep, not the body sensation. I am really good at relaxing my body. I'm into yoga, y'all know. I'm a big yogi. And so I'm really in touch with and in tune with my body. So I can make myself relax, right? Like I can tap into my breath. I can make my body relax. But I can't turn my mind off. And that is what the sativa strains did for me. And so I tell you that because there's a lot of nuance in what you're smoking, right? So, or what you're consuming, whether you're smoking it or not, because it comes in so many different forms. And, if you want a list, head over to maryzeal.com/free, check out the Beginner to Bud Boss Guide. There is a whole list in there of the many different ways that you can consume cannabis. So I say all that to say what you are smoking and what you are consuming matters. And there is, an indica sativa hybrid, that's just the scratch on the surface, right? That's just very surface level. And again, we're going to go over that in a second. So the first thing to keep in mind and to take into consideration when you are picking out different strains and different things to consume is you want to start with the intention. Right? I mentioned earlier, this month is all about being intentional. And the reason that this intention matters is because it's going to dictate what you want to buy or what you want to consume. And so how you set your intention is thinking about, like, what kind of high are you going for? What type of effect do you want to have, right? So, like, are you looking for pain relief? Are you looking to chill and just relax? Are you looking to be creative and do something artistic? Are you looking for something that's just going to release your stress at the end of the day and you just want to unwind? Or do you want something that's going to start your day feeling energized and uplifted? So really start to figure out, like, what am I going for here? And it'll change, like there are times when I smoke and I just want to sit on my couch and watch Netflix. There are times when I am getting up and I'm like, okay, I got stuff to get done. I got to get some stuff done today. And so I need to smoke something that that'll help me with focus, right? So what's the intention? And then even digging into that as well, going a little bit further, is saying like, well, what type of, do you want to feel high or not, right? Do you just want to get the medicinal effects? Do you want to actually feel that euphoric high, or do you want something that you can just take that'll help you with stress throughout the day, right? And when you answer that question, that'll help you determine, am I going for THC? Am I going for CBD? THC and CBD are cannabinoids. The main difference between THC and CBD is that THC gives you that euphoric high feeling and CBD does not, right? These are both same cannabinoids in the same plant, the same cannabis plant, right? But they do different things. And we're really going to dive in really, really deep into CBD and cannabinoids and stuff next week. So I'm not going to go super, super deep into that today. But what I want you to understand is that, one, you don't have to feel high when you consume cannabis, right? You can just find something that will help you to manage the stress, manage the pain, manage the anxiety throughout the rest of your day without having to feel the effects of being high. And then you want to lean more on things that have more CBD in them. Indica strains tend to have more CBD. And so it starts with the intention. It starts with, how do you want to feel? And everything starts with you, right? This whole podcast, if you've listened to this podcast before, this shouldn't be surprising. I am all about self-care. We are all about self-care here, and cannabis is self-care. And just like cannabis, and just like self-care, cannabis has to be intentional, right? Your self-care needs to be intentional. The commitment you make to yourself, the things that you do to pour into yourself have to be intentional, right? You're not just getting up and saying like, oh, I'll just meditate today. Maybe if I get a chance. No, it's saying like, hey, I am making this commitment to myself that I am going to pour into myself, and it's intentional. I am doing this activity. I'm taking this break to read a book. I'm taking this nap to recharge my battery. I'm going on a run to make my body feel great, right? All of these things are intentional, and your cannabis is no different. Your cannabis should be very intentional, because that's how you get the best out of it, right? That's how you get the best out of it. That's how you can be someone like me who can get up in the morning and work throughout the whole day and be high and just killing it, right? That's how you when you start to understand, like, what am I using this for? And how can I use this for my benefit, right? This is all about you. It's all about pouring into you. So start with the intention. Start with thinking about, how do I want to feel? What do I want to help with? All right, so we've got our intention, right? It's got your intention. Let's start with the difference between sativa, indica, and hybrid. Let's go into that. And so essentially, this is how weed is classified. This is how dispensaries classify weed. So they classify them by sativas, which are energizing, upper euphoric types of strains. You have indicas that are typically relaxing, sedating, pain relieving strains. And then you have hybrids, who are a mix of the two, right? And they can lean certain ways. So you could have something that's 60% sativa and 40% indica. Or you could have something that's, 80% sativa and 20% indica, or leaning the other way, right? And so as I mentioned before, that's why I started with my story about how indicas didn't work to help me sleep. That is just the surface level. That's just the surface. So indicas and sativas are something that I think is great for beginners to understand, because if you are a beginner and, you are feeling like, okay, I'm just getting started. There's a lot here. Start with indica, sativa, hybrid, right? Those are a great way to kind of like start to figure out what kind of effects you want. So again, sativa strains, they tend to be euphoric, energizing strains. They tend to be things that, they give you more of a mind high is what it's typically referred to as. Indicas are typically referred to as a body high. So it makes your body just feel relaxed. It makes you just kind of let go. And honestly, I've heard that, a lot of, and it's interesting because within cannabis culture, you'll find people who are like real sativa people, or you find people who are real indica people, right? So, I'm always someone who said I'm a sativa person, right? But I'm just like an uplifted, euphoric, energizing type of person, right? I want my cannabis to make me feel lifted and excited. I don't need it to relax my body or anything like that. So you find people who lean either super sativa or they're super indica, and they're into one or the other, and they don't do much in the other. And I've heard and have experienced, honestly, that sometimes if you are more like, say for me, I like sativas, indicas give me anxiety. And when I know you probably were asking yourself, like, well, why would an indica give you anxiety? Because I'm in my mind freaking out that my body's not moving. Okay. Because I'm just like, I've had indicas before where I'm just like sitting on the couch and I'm just like, okay, my body's really relaxed. It's really heavy. I don't feel like moving my body. But my mind is like, oh my God, why can't you move? We need to move. This is too much. Why is your body feeling so heavy? Right? My mind is still going. Okay. So, and I've heard that with, people who tend to like indicas. They say like, oh, sativa strains, uppers, they give me anxiety. They get their brain going super fast. Right. So, you definitely want to just try different things. You want to experiment, figure out what works for you. And so sativa indica hybrid, that's just a great place to start. But because, I like to push the envelope, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go dive a lot deeper into what you really need to be looking for underneath of the lens of indica sativa hybrid. So the way that indica sativas and sativas are typically classified is basically by the terpene count, right? So terpenes are like essential oils. Terpenes are what give things their scent, their flavor, and then also their benefits. So for example, lavender is a great example. Lavender is a calming scent, relaxing kind of scent, and it's typically used in like calming products, right? Like you might get a lavender candle that's for, evening, or you get like some lotion that's supposed to be relaxing, right? So lavender is typically one of those smells that is more associated with calming. So lavender is a great example, right? Lavender, it has all those kind of effects I mentioned, right? And so terpenes work the same way. And so terpenes are also, you find terpenes in plants, right? You find terpenes in weed. So terpenes are what play a big part in the effects you're going to feel, right? So really what you want to start to look at when you start to move past that beginner kind of level is you want to start to look at the terpene percentage within the strains that you like, because that's what's really giving you the different things that you feel. It's not the indica or the sativa necessarily. It is the makeup of the terpenes, what kind of cannabinoids are in them, cannabinoids like CBD, THC, etc. And then sometimes I hear people saying that they're looking, when they're looking to buy cannabis, they're looking at the THC percentage, thinking that that's going to give you the best benefits. But that's not the case, right? So the THC percentage is just telling you how much THC is in it. And so the THC is just like how strong this is, right? And so I've seen cannabis THC percentages up to like 32%, 30+%. And so that's just going to indicate that it's something that's strong, that is something that's potent. But that's not going to tell you how it's going to affect your body. What's going to tell you how it's going to affect your body is the terpene percentages. Like what percentage of terpenes are in each different strain of weed. So here are 5 commonly found terpenes within cannabis. And I'm going to tell you what kind of smell they have, the benefits, and also some foods that you can associate with it, right? So that'll help you remember it and help you think of, what kind of effects you get when you eat or or smell these types of food. So the first most commonly, this one, myrcene is the first terpene we're going to go over. Myrcene is the most commonly found terpene. It's usually in every cannabis strain. I've rarely seen a cannabis strain that doesn't have at least some kind of myrcene in it, right? So don't be deterred if you see myrcene in something. But what you want to look at is the percentage. So myrcene smells earthy, sweet, and clove-like. And the benefits include it's anti-inflammatory and pain relief. And so I want to stick on this pain relief, right? So the myrcene, if you're trying to find something that is going to help you with pain, you want to look for a strain that has a lot of myrcene in it. Myrcene is really going to help you with pain. It'll help you with the inflammation if you have inflammation. And so look at the percentages, and most cannabis have a lot of different different terpenes in them, right? You're not gonna say like, oh, this terpene, this cannabis strain only has myrcene in it, right? But what you're looking at is the percentages, and I'm gonna tell you where to find this information in a little bit. So some foods associated with myrcene: mangoes, hops, like from beer, and lemongrass. So mangoes is fun fact. If you eat a mango before you consume cannabis, it'll make you feel higher because there's myrcene in mangoes. So try it. Let me know. I've tried it before and I think it worked. I thought it was fun, and I also just like mango. But yeah. Next is pinene. So pinene, kind of just like the name sounds, its smell is pine or like wood, so like trees, that type of thing. Its benefits are anti-inflammatory, focus, alertness, and mental clarity. And so focus, I love to find, when I find a strain with pinene in it, I know, oh, this is going to be great for a day that I really need to dig in and do some work, right? Like a day when I'm recording a bunch of podcasts, or a day when I'm writing some emails or something like that. Something where I'm like, I really need to focus and do something. This is great. Also great for the morning, great for throughout the day. Really, really good to help with focus. It's called pinene. And some foods associated with that are dill, basil, and pine nuts. So start to think about how these things smell, right? You start to associate a smell with a benefit, right? And start to associate a smell with a terpene, and then you'll start to remember like, okay, this typically does this because it smells like this. And one of the best examples and one of my favorite terpenes that I'm always looking for is limonene. I love limonene, okay? And just like the name sounds, limonene smells like citrus. So it's like lemon, lime, orange. Those are some foods that are associated with it. But and think about the benefits that you get from lemons or limes or citrus kind of smells. Think about it for a second. Were you thinking mood elevator? Were you thinking something that wakes you up? Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it does. The benefits are antidepressant, and it's a mood elevator. So it's really not that complicated, y'all. Like once you start to just kind of get an idea of what it is and start to read it and really just understand it, this will start to come to you like second nature. And this is literally what I look for whenever I pick anything to buy. And next we have beta carafyline. Not sure if I said that right, but this one is a smell of spice, pepper, or like a woody kind of smell, right? So think about how those things smell. Pepper, woods, like, spicy kind of stuff. The benefits are reduces inflammation and pain. Some foods associated with it are black pepper, dark leafy greens, herbs, oregano, stuff like that, right? So again, pointing out that it reduces inflammation and pain. And you think about, myrcene does the same thing. So if you're looking for something that is going to help you with pain, inflammation, maybe you want to find something that has a lot of myrcene and a lot of beta carafyline in it, right? Look at those percentages, saying like, oh, this strain has a higher percentage of these terpenes that typically help with pain relief. So let me try those. And the last one we're going to talk about is linalool. Linalool is like a floral kind of smell. Benefits are it's antimicrobial, it's relaxing, it helps with stress relief, and some foods that are associated with it are like cinnamon, lavender, sage, right? So think about those florally kind of smells. That's what this is really going to go for. And relaxing, stress relief, all that kind of good stuff. So you want to start to think about the when you're looking at cannabis strains, like what are the percentages of the terpenes that go with the intention that you want. If you want to go and have something where you're really focused, find something with some pinene in it. Or maybe you want to be, focused but awake and energized and happy. So you're going with a pinene and a limonene mix. That's usually what I go for. And a fun fact is that really, because these things are associated with smell, like one of the tricks, and if you go to some dispensaries, we're going to talk about dispensaries in a second, but if you go to some dispensaries, they'll let you actually smell the cannabis and they'll let you smell weed. The reason they let you smell it is because usually if it smells good to you, it's usually going to have a positive impact on your body. So that's a tip, right? So if you smell it and it doesn't smell good to you, it doesn't make you go like, oh yeah, that's exciting, that makes me feel good, that smells good to me, then maybe you want to try something else. So if you have the opportunity to go into a dispensary or to smell what you're about to buy, make sure you smell it, make sure it smells good to you. So now that we've talked about some terpenes, there are so many more terpenes, y'all. There's so many, right? So I'm only going to give you 5 commonly found ones, but you can definitely, I have some resources linked in the show notes about some places to go if you want to really dive into some more information about terpenes. And I'm also going to list you a couple of things here. Like, so I've given you a lot of information today, and I understand that sometimes it's a lot to consume. But really, you have a lot of places you can go for help. You can always go to maryzeal.com for information about how to use cannabis for self-care and meditations and yoga and weed with all that kind of stuff, right? And some educational stuff there. And I have a blog post there that I'll also link in the show notes about how to pick strains, my 5 tips for picking strains. So if you just want to read this through. I wanted to give you some more places to go because really this is about being intentional. It's about feeding ourselves. It's about giving ourselves what we need, right? And so I could tell you like, hey, my favorite strain is Bruce Banner, or my favorite strain is, a mimosa or clementine, or I can tell you all of these things, right? But that's just what works for me in my body, in my endocannabinoid system. That's what works for me. So in order to find something that works for you, you got to start doing your research. And so how do you figure out what terpenes are in cannabis, right? The best place is your dispensary. So the first place that you can go for some information is your dispensary's website. If you happen to live in a medical or recreational state and you go to a dispensary to get your cannabis, you can look on their website. And a lot of times they have their COA or their certificate of analysis. Most legal dispensaries have to have some kind of documentation of what terpenes, cannabinoids, and etc. are in specific strains. So either it's available online. There are a lot of places that I go to that I see online that have, strains, and some of them tell you the percentages that they have them. Other places you can go into the store and they can look it up in their store and they can tell you. Or you can also ask your bud tender, right? Ask your bud tender to know, like, hey, what is the terpene count in this particular strain? I was looking at this, I saw this online, or, this looks interesting. Can you tell me what kind of what terpenes are in it? What are the percentages? Or show me some kind of, documentation, right? This is very normal. It is okay to ask to know what terpenes are in cannabis, right? Do not feel like you are burdened asking questions, because that poor gentleman that I went to the first time, I asked him 1,000 questions. Okay. But, I wanted to get what was right for me, right? This is about me. This is about me, fixing my problem and using it throughout my life. So I want to make sure that I ask the questions that I need answered. So make sure you check out your dispensaries, or you go to your bud tender, your dispensary workers and stuff like that. They are a wealth of information. Next place you can do, you can look online. So there's plenty of research, plenty of websites online where you can do some research. So Leafly is my go-to. Leafly.com is really my go-to for information on specific strains I want to try. So like, for example, if I'm looking on a dispensary's website and they don't have their percentages there and I see something interesting, I may go on Leafly and say like, hey, what are people saying about this strain? What kind of effects are people saying they typically get? Does Leafly have the typical percentage count? They also have information about different strains available at different dispensaries in your area, stuff like that. So Leafly is a great place to go to get some information. Weed Maps is another place that you can go to. It's also really good for just with a lot of great information. Also, there's some apps. Leafly also has an app, I believe. Yeah, I believe Leafly also has an app. Weed Maps has an app. But then there's a couple more apps that I've actually tried that are really, really good for this type of thing. So if you're looking for something that'll help you track strains, because that's another great way to determine which strains work for you, is just like when you try something, just maybe either writing down in your journal or something, or a piece in a notebook saying like, hey, this strain did this for me. I felt like this, or I didn't really feel much with this strain. It had this, this much, the top couple terpenes in it were this and whatever. So you can do it that way, or you can use an app. So there's a couple apps that I have used that I really like. One is called Jointly. And so Jointly helps you to track like the effects of different strains that you try. And it also has a product finder, which I think is cool. And it helps you find it gives you recommendations based on different things that you can select. Like you can say, I want to find something for sleep and, excuse me. You can say something like, I want to find something for sleep. I want to find something that makes me feel euphoric. And it'll give you some recommendations. It has a couple more questions in there about what you want to use. But that's a great app, Jointly. Another great app is On Tracker. I like On Tracker. You can use it to track your cannabis use, but you can also use it to track more things in your life, like medications, habits that you're trying to build. It has mental health check-in. So it's just kind of a good all-around app to use to track your cannabis use as well as some other things. And they had a bunch of new features come out recently, so definitely check them out. Well, all right, y'all. We have talked about a lot today, so I hope that you have taken some notes. We talked about how the best way to start with how you want to consume cannabis and picking strains that'll work for you is starting with your intention, tapping into yourself, saying like, what do I really want to use this for? We've talked about the difference between sativa, indicas, and hybrids. We've talked about what terpenes are, why you should really be paying attention to these when you're buying cannabis. We also talked about why the THC percentage is not necessarily indicative of how it's going to impact your body. And I've also given you some really good websites to go to, like your dispensary website, Leafly, Jointly, On Tracker, try some apps, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things I want you to walk away with is just to have a curious mind when it comes to cannabis. Cannabis, you can consume it in so many different ways. It can do so many different things. And I hope that throughout the rest of the month, you really learn about some of these different ways that you can be intentional with it and use it for your benefit. I remember I always said like, oh, I'm a sativa girl, but really I'm a limonene girl. I really like it, uplifting. I like to feel uplifted and euphoric when I'm high. I always look at the terpene count before I buy anything, whether that's a pre-roll, whether that's flower, or, anything. I always look and say, like, what terpenes are in this? What cannabinoids are most present in this? And I usually go for THC, higher THC strains. CBD I usually take as like gummies and, stuff like that. It's more of a multivitamin. And you're going to learn about that next week. But if you want more information about this, you really want to have something that you can put your hands on and read, check out my Beginner to Bud Boss guide. It's going to be linked in the show notes. That guide I put together that I wish I had when I first started using cannabis, right? Because it's a guide that goes through like, okay, what do I need to know to start to bring cannabis into my life? You're like, okay, Stacey, you've convinced me. I want to bring cannabis into my life. What do I do? That is what my Beginner to Bud Boss guide is. It goes through how cannabis impacts your body, difference between CBD and THC, how to pick strains, ways to consume, tools you'll need, like, whether you need papers and lighters and all kinds of stuff you may need. So definitely make sure you check that out. And make sure you head over to maryzeal.com/31 to get the show notes. All of the resources that I've talked about and everything that we've gone over today will be in there. And I would love, love, love if you would leave a comment on that page to let me know what you thought of this podcast. So that's our episode for today, y'all. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you loved it. I'll catch you in the next one. Well, that's a wrap on another episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you got a nugget of information or inspiration from this episode, here are 5 ways you can support the podcast. You can buy me a coffee at buymethatcoffee.com/high-on-self-care to send your token of appreciation. You can shop Mary Zeal's favorite things. This is a list of products that we love and have actually tried over at maryzeal.com, and some of these products contain affiliate links that give us a kickback when you shop their site at no cost to you. You can leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you are listening on the web, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast app of choice. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the places. 4th, you can share the podcast with 3 friends that you think will benefit from all the nuggets that we drop. And lastly, you can join my email list to get episodes sent to you weekly and learn about all the fun new things we have coming up on maryzeal.com and the podcast. All the links are in the description. And I will catch you on the next episode.